Hey everybody, I'm going to read a little excerpt for you guys from this book, The Go Cookbook by Louis P. de Gouy. I think you might find this interesting. It is curious that although the various arts, music, drama, painting, and the like have become international in scope, each country, in the matter of food, seems to prefer to isolate itself. Now this can be true. Food is geographical in nature. We develop technologies and use resources of what we found locally, and then as our societies grew, our tastes grew, but certain things that we knew were tried and true for our survival worked. Now I'm going to be making a sweet potato waffle from this book. This book in particular was gifted to me by an old lady in the neighborhood. We shared a love of food, restaurants, equipment, recipes, and that sort of thing. And the history of the waffle is pretty interesting if you want to really think about it. In the written record, we know that the Greeks had something known as obelios, which is basically a cake that was cooked between two irons. Now this technique eventually got transmitted through to Europe, and in France in particular, and there was a subsect of pastry chefs known as oblueurs, or the bakers of oblis, or what we know as waffles. And what they used to do is they used to supply the churches with their Eucharist. They had designs in their waffle irons, sold them as such. But then some industrious oblueurs thought, hey, wait a minute. I'm selling them the Eucharist. I can also sell them on the way out of church by making a dessert one. Modify the recipe slightly. It's crispy, sweet. And that's how dessert waffles came around. Now, if we take it into the modern context, I'm using ingredients, the sweet potato, that are from South America, using modern technology, electricity, baking powder. But basically, it's the same sort of idea. So every time you make a recipe, think about these things. Because food, especially comfort food, supersedes country, tradition. It just tastes good. That's what all gourmands like. That's what all food people like. Anyways, let's check this one out. And on today's episode, Chef de Gouy's sweet potato waffles. So we're going to need some mashed sweet potato, some milk, 2 separated eggs, brown sugar, butter, flour, and baking powder. You can pause the video and I'll have it in the description as well. To bake a sweet potato, preheat the oven to 425, put some holes in the sweet potato, cook it for around an hour, then you mash it. Now we're also going to need to separate the yolks and the whites. The yolks enrich the batter, the whites give it airiness and structure. We're also going to melt some butter. Okay, let's get going. Take your baking powder, put it in with the flour, and we're going to sift it together. This helps incorporate both ingredients and gives it a nice light airiness. You can play around with different flours later on, but just regular flour, a bit of baking powder. Now for the wet ingredients. We're going to take our mashed sweet potato and we're going to put it inside of a clean bowl. Then, from there, we're going to add our brown sugar and we're going to add the milk, and we're also going to add the melted butter. Now we're going to mix this all together until it's pretty uniform. No big lumps in it. It's a very straightforward method. The next step is to add the egg yolks. Now, as I mentioned before, this will help enrichen our base of our batter. So you just put the egg yolks straight in there, mix it all together until it's all homogeneous. Now, from this point, we're going to gradually add our dry ingredients. The sifted flour and baking powder goes in a bit at a time, and you incorporate it. Make sure you don't have any big lumps. I usually do it in about 3 additions. And then you just take your spatula, work it into your batter. Don't forget to go along the edges, get all that flour in there. You don't want any lumps. Just take your time, mix, work in circles, then go along the edges, make sure you don't miss anything. Take some time, but it's worth doing. Now after all the flour has been incorporated, we're going to add our egg whites. We whip them up to stiff peak and we gradually incorporate them. Take about half, fold them in, take the remaining half, and then you gently fold those in. You don't want any streaks, you just want to add the egg whites to give it some structure and some lightness, just like a cake batter. And it should look like this. Once that's done, we preheat our waffle iron, put a little bit of batter, a little bit of oil, and go for about 5 minutes, depending on the model you have, of course. Very simple procedure, very quick, and very tasty. And Chef de Gouy's sweet potato waffle looks like this. Fluffy, golden brown, pretty sweet. Very, very simple and very effective for a 75-year-old recipe. And he also added blueberry sauce to his, and I'm adding mine. There you go, people. Waffles for everyone. Take care. Have a great week.